Today is the first episode in a new series where I teach you guys how to make Minecraft mods without any coding whatsoever. Now for today, we're going to be looking at how to make items and how to put them in their own creative tab. We'll make a basic item like this ender pearl fragment here that doesn't really do anything, and then we'll also make a custom fuel, which can be used as actual fuel in a furnace. Let's get started. Alright, so first things first, I'm just going to show you how to install the program. Now the program we're going to be using today is called MCreator. So you're going to want to head to mcreator.net, which will be the first link in the description on your favorite web browser, and just click on download MCreator right here. Now find the latest version right up here at the top and click on download. And then you're just going to want to download the exe installer, the easiest and simplest option, and you'll be waiting for it to download. And once it is done downloading, you can just click on the file that's downloaded in order to open it. If it asks you that, just click on yes, and then we can move through the setup. So just next, agree to the terms, and you can choose where you want to install it, wait for it, and click on finish. There we go. That's it. Simple as that. Now, if you're on a Mac, the process is going to be a little bit different, but mostly the same. Once again, you're going to want to come to mcreator.net, same website, same link in the description, click on download, and click on the latest version. Close any ads that pop up. And then there's actually two different versions here that could be applicable. There's the Intel version and the Apple Silicon version. And in order to find out which one you want, just come to the Apple menu in the top left corner of your screen and About This Mac. And you'll see a window that looks like this, or possibly this if you have a newer Mac. And under Processor or Chip, you're just going to want to find either Intel or Apple. And if it says Intel, you're going to grab the Intel version. And for Apple, of course, the Apple version. So I have Intel here, as you can see. So I am just going to choose the Intel image. Click on that and wait for the download. Now the download's done, you can just click on the file to open it, agree to the terms once again, and then you can drag it into your applications folder. Wait for that copy to complete, and then you can just close that out and go to your Launchpad, and it should just be waiting in there. There it is right there, so we can click on it to open it. If it asks you that, you can click on open, and you're all good to go. Okay, so now that we're all good and installed, you should have a window that looks like this, and we're just going to come and click on this new workspace button right here. Now, this interface might look a little bit complicated already, but I'll walk you through it. So, first of all, on the left here is going to be the type of mod that we want to create. Now, by default, it's going to be a NeoForge mod. This is just the type of mod loader. So you know how there's Fabric mods, Forge mods. We're going to be making a NeoForge mod because that is what's built into MCreator. You can also do data packs and resource packs, but we're going to ignore those because the purposes of this series is going to be making a mod. Now, under the mod display name, this is going to be the name of the mod that's shown in the game. What I want the premise of this series to be is actually we're going to make an end update. So I'm going to call this just end update. This will be shown in the mods list in game, and then it will automatically fill out the rest of these fields here. And you can pretty much just leave them, but I'm still going to explain what they do. The mod ID and namespace right here is going to be what shows up in like give commands, for example. And it's going to be like the name of your mod in code, which we'll be referencing a little bit later. This Java package name here, for most cases, you can leave this just as it is. These first two things right here are basically a website. So you would normally put your website. Obviously, I'm assuming most of you guys don't own a website, but it's kind of put in backwards. So I'm going to do ca.modmonster. I have a website, modmonster.ca, and then this end here is just your mod name, but you guys can leave this just as the default. And then for the workspace folder, again, you can choose where this is saved on your computer. You can put it wherever you want, but I'm just going to leave it at this default location. And then you can just go ahead and click on create new workspace down here. And now we're just going to be waiting for the setup to happen. Now this could take a little bit of time, so it's a good time to go grab a snack. This took about 25 to 30 minutes the first time it was going for me. Now it's going to happen much quicker because I've already done it once. Once you've already made one mod and everything's stored on your computer, it doesn't have to download it again, so it happens much faster. Also, I have pretty slow internet right now, so that could have been why. All right, so this is the basic MCreator interface that you're going to be looking at, and I'm going to go through a couple things. Just these buttons on the left right here are probably the most important things. This one right here allows you to add new mod elements, and these are all the different elements that are in MCreator. We will get to all of these, but we're going to be going one at a time and starting with items, which we'll get to in a minute. This button will let you edit mod elements. They'll pop up in this window once they've been created, and you can click on them and click this edit button in order to edit them. This will let you duplicate it. So if you have an existing element that you want to like copy the behavior of and make something that's very similar, you can click this. This one will delete it. And then these last two here are a little bit more complicated. So this one will let you directly edit the code of the mod element, and this one will lock the code, which is what you're going to want to do if you end up editing the code. It just means that MCreator will not overwrite the code that you've written with its own thing. Now, even further to the left of this, we have these tabs here. This top one here is where you'll spend most of your time in the mod elements section. Underneath it is resources, and this will contain things like your texture files, so what blocks look like, 3D models, so the shape of blocks, animations for your blocks, sounds, structures, which are like villages or dungeons or anything, screenshots, which you take in-game, and then this tab over here is pretty unique. This is just all of the resources in vanilla Minecraft, and if you go under textures here, you can find, for example, item textures, just of anything, and you can use these for reference, and these are very useful. Under here we have element tags, and this is going to be explained in episode 3, so we're just going to ignore this for now. Variables, going to be covered again more later, and localization. This is going to be the name of your blocks and items as they show up in game. This is pretty much something you can ignore. It is helpful if you want to translate your mod into multiple languages, but I assume most of you guys aren't interested in that, so we'll just ignore it and come back to the mod elements tab. Now, to get started, like I said earlier, let us create our first custom item, and this is going to be an ender pearl fragment. It's a piece of an ender pearl, and it's not really going to do anything. It's going to be used in crafting later on, just a basic item to teach you guys how to use the software. So you can come to this plus button up here, click on it, and click on item. Now it's going to ask for the name of the item, and as it says here, you're going to want to use upper camel case names, which means names where each word is uppercase and no spaces. So for example, ender pearl fragment, just like this. So as you can see, I didn't put any spaces in between everything, and the start of each word is capitalized. Then you can just click on create new item, and we'll be brought into this window. Now the item texture is going to be one of the first things we're going to want to look at. So if we click on it here, we have the option to choose from any of the vanilla Minecraft textures, but I'm going to assume that you want to make a custom texture for your item. And you have two options up here. Either you can create one from scratch using MCreator's built-in texture editor, or you can import one if you have it saved on your computer already. But I'm going to be creating one from scratch just to show you guys how to use the texture editor. Click on create, and here's your pixel editor. Now you can of course click to draw, just drag around like this. And if you come up here, you'll see a couple different tools. So next up we have the align tool. If you click on that and then you click and drag, it'll make directly straight lines like this, as you can see. Then over here you have the shape tool, where down here you can pick different shapes. For example, a square just will allow you to draw perfectly even squares like this. And then the eraser tool, which just lets you erase things. You can, for all of these, increase the brush size, which as you can see, just gives you a bigger erasing square. Then we have stamps, and this will let you stamp existing textures into your workspace. So for example, we could pick this iron ingot texture and just stamp it down. There we go. Now we have bucket fill, and this just fills everything in an area with a certain color. Again, if you've used any sort of editor before, you'll know what this is. And this is probably a good time to mention that up here, there's undo and redo buttons, which just let you undo stuff that you don't like. And then we have the color picker right here. And if you click on it and then click on any color in your workspace, then you'll notice that now you're painting with that color. And of course, if you want to actually change the color, you can click on this square right here and just pick whatever color you want. So we'll do nice yellow. And now we're painting yellow. All right, so what I've gone ahead and done here is created this texture for this ender pearl fragment. And once you're done and you're happy with what it looks like, you can just come up here to this save this texture button. Click on it. Now it's going to ask what the name of the texture should be. I would recommend you copy the name of your item, but instead of spaces, you're going to use underscores. And this is going to be all lowercase. So ender underscore pearl underscore fragment. That's how you name your textures. And then what kind of texture is this? This is just going to correspond to what we're using it for. So this is obviously an item texture, but we'll be making block textures and things in the next couple episodes. So just click on save this texture, and now we're good to go. Now this is probably a good time to point out this little tab bar that we have up here, which shows everything that's going on at once. If we click on the workspace, we come back to this view. And if we click on the ender pearl fragment, we come back to the view of where we're making our item. And then this is, of course, our texture editor. And now that we've saved it, we can actually just click on this X and close the texture editor. And now when we come to pick our item texture, it will be present in the list right here. We can just double click on it, and now we've went ahead and set our item texture. There's a couple other options on this page here, such as the item model. Now, in coming episodes, again, we're going to talk about how to make custom models, which is effectively just the shape of your items. You can make them 3D and cool looking, like the spyglass, for example, but the built-in ones are normal, which is just going to be basically your everyday item and what we're going to be using here. We also have tool, and then ranged item also just affects how it gets held in the hand, but we're going to go back to normal. Now, the alternative item texture is a different item texture, which gets used everywhere anywhere except for in the player's hand. So if we set this to something different, it will show as this texture in inventories, in item frames, when it gets dropped on the ground, everywhere except for when the player is holding it. And this is mostly useful for when you're making custom models as well, so we'll get into that later. Now these next two things are whether the item is glowing, so you can turn this on or off, and glowing is basically just like the enchantment glint that you see on items, and special information is anything that might show up underneath the item, like for example enchantments on enchanting books or information on potions. And this can be added to by clicking this edit button, where you can then type whatever you want, and every new entry in this list is going to be a new line underneath your item. But I'm going to just remove all and just click OK, just so we leave it blank, because this is just a normal item. Now, in order to move on to the next page, we can just click on the next page down here in this little list of pages. And now we're on to item states. This is another sort of complicated thing that we're not going to be covering yet. And what you're actually able to do with this is make different states of your item, which will be able to be changed later in the scripting that we're going to be doing. And what we do with these different properties is we make things have different textures. So for instance, with this, we could do something like making our item have an inactive and an active state, and it could change what it looks like in order to reflect that. But again, we might get into this a little bit more later. Next up, for animations, we can ignore this. This has entirely to do with custom models and making them animated, but we're just using a regular model. So we'll ignore this and move on to properties. This is a little bit more of a basic page. You can probably figure out most of this on your own, but I'm going to go through it anyway. This in-game name is what is going to show up in your inventory and basically everywhere where you look at the item. The rarity down here changes the color of the name in your inventory. So common makes it white, uncommon is yellow, rare is blue, and epic is purple. Now the creative inventory tabs lets you set which tab the item belongs to in your creative inventory. Once we finish this, I'm going to go over how to make custom inventory tabs, but for now we can add it to any of the vanilla ones. So I'm going to add it to like ingredients, for instance. Do note that you can add multiple of them, as you can see here, and just click on one and click on the X to get rid of it. Max stack size, of course, is just how much the item stacks to. Most of the time this is 64, obviously that's one stack of items. Enchantability is a bit of a weird one. This doesn't really work unless you put it on tools. If you set it to anything higher than 0, when you put it in an enchanting table, you'll just get this weird limited enchantment message. So I would leave this one as 0 if I were you. Now these next two are sort of to do with tools. The item destroy speed is how fast it will destroy blocks. Now you're gonna probably want to leave this at 1, which is the same speed as your fist, but you could increase this in order to make it destroy blocks faster. But again, we're gonna be going over how to make tools in a separate episode, and there is a whole separate system for making tools that doesn't go through items. So again, most of the time I'd leave this at 1. Item use count and durability is basically the durability of the item. As I'm sure you can gather, it gives you that little durability bar underneath it. And if we put in here, for example, 300, it will have 300 uses. But again, it's just a regular item, so I'm going to put this back to 0. Item is immune to fire. Basically, if you throw it in lava or fire, will it burn? And the only things in vanilla that this is true for is netherite items will not burn in fire. If you check it's a piglin currency, then you can use it instead of gold when you're bartering with piglins. Can destroy any block is a bit of an interesting one. I can't really think of why you would want to check this, but what it does is it makes it able to destroy any block. Now this doesn't work with obviously unbreakable blocks and things like bedrock, which interestingly enough contradicts what it says here. It does not work on bedrock, but it will let you break blocks like stone and ores and actually get the block drops out of them. But again, this is more of a tool thing and we'll be focusing on tools later. Whether the item stays in the crafting grid when crafted, this just means when you craft something with it, will it be deleted or not? If you turn this on, it will sit in the crafting grid after you made something with it and you can reuse it multiple times. Additionally, if you turn this on, you get the option to damage item on crafting. You'll of course have to give it some durability, but if you check this, that means that whenever you craft with it, the durability will go down, which could be useful for some sort of like crafting hammer or something. And then this recipe remainder down here, once again, only is relevant if it stays in the crafting grid when crafted. And this means that it will be replaced by another item when it's used to craft. So for instance, anytime you craft with a bucket of water or a potion bottle, it replaces it with an empty bucket or an empty bottle. And you could do something like that here as well. Now these last two are pretty much linked as well. The item animation is what animation will be shown while you're holding right click with the item. So you can make it look like you're eating it or you're blocking with it, something like that. And then the item use duration is for how long it can be used at a time. And that might sound a little complicated, but that will be useful later when, again, we're giving functionality to items. And I'm going to focus on this more in coming tutorials. Next tab down here is food properties. If you're not making a food, which we're not, we can completely ignore this, but I'll go over it anyway. You can check it, and this will make it edible. Now, nutritional value is how many of the hunger haunches you're going to fill up, but this is actually double that number. So this, for instance, would fill up 2 hunger haunches. Each one of these corresponds to half of a hunger point. And now the saturation is actually an internal mechanic that you don't normally see, which controls how long the player will be able to go without eating again. If this is set to 0, then the hunger bar will just continue to go down basically. But if you put this up a little bit, it means that the hunger bar will go down less fast after you're eating this, which is something that you can notice when you're eating sweet berries. You have to eat a lot more of them than when you're eating steak. And it's not just because they restore 8 times less hunger. You do actually have to eat more often. Now, I think this is a good time to mention that for values like this that you don't really have a good reference for, the Minecraft wiki is a great reference. So here's the food mechanics page, and if we come down to food saturation values right here, we can just see the saturation values of every item in the normal game. So for instance, if you're making something meatier like steak, you would want to have this up near like 13, and then something less nutritional like berries are 0.4. And then this eating item result down here will just be what it's replaced with when you eat. So for example, when you drink stew, it gets replaced with an empty bowl, and this is just a similar sort of idea here. Now this checkbox will just control if you can feed it to dogs or not, and then is always edible controls if you can eat it even when your hunger bar is full. So for things like golden apples that you can eat all the time. Now additionally, if you are making a food, you're gonna wanna come back to properties and set the item animation to eating or drinking, and then set this item use duration to 32. And that is the amount of ticks that it takes to eat a normal piece of food in Minecraft. But also note, you could make this smaller, as certain things like sweet berries get eaten faster than the regular item. But 32 is the normal value if you're making a food, but I'm not. So I'm just gonna set this back to no animation and 0 and turn this back off. Next up, we have advanced properties, and I'm gonna cover pretty much all of this in future tutorials. This one will make sense once we talk about GUIs and inventories. I have a whole separate video planned on music disks and banner patterns and ranged items. And if you're making this a melee weapon, you'll generally want to be using a sword anyway. That way you get other things like sweeping and the attack cooldown. So we're gonna skip past this whole tab and move on to attribute modifiers. And this is a pretty cool way to give your items certain functionality. Attributes are things on players, like their health, their movement speed, things like that. And if we come up here to add an entry, this will let us modify those values on the players. So this equipment slot right here controls where it would have to be on the player. So for example, main hand would be when you're holding it in your hand. And then here are all of the lists of attributes. And once again, if you're not sure what some of these do, you can look them up on the Minecraft wiki. But for instance, something like block reach will control how far away you can break and place blocks. Now over here in operation, there's 3 different options. You can either add a certain amount. So for instance, if we were to put 1 for this, that adds 1 block that you can reach. Then there's multiplied base, which will multiply the base player value by this amount and then add it to the base player value. So if we were to put 1 here, that would be effectively doubling your block reach. And then add multiplied total, we'll do this to the total instead of the player's base. And what that means is that if you have multiple things that are affecting this block reach at once, this will be applied on top of all of them instead of on top of the player's base values. And then finally, this triggers section down here. And this has to do all with procedures and scripting, but you can make certain things happen when each of these events happen. And once again, we're going to be going over all of this later. So now we can go ahead and just click on Save Mod Element up here. And there we go. There's our first mod element. All right, now on to the second thing, which I'd like to do, which is to create a separate creative tab for all of the items that we're gonna add in this mod. So in order to do that, we can come up to this plus over here and just creative tab. Now this is gonna take the same sort of naming scheme like we did earlier. So I'm gonna call this end update creative tab. Create new creative tab. Now this name is what's gonna be shown in the inventory. So I'm just gonna call this end update. Just get rid of the creative tab part. And then for the icon, we have to choose an item to be the icon of our tab. And that is what shows up in the menu. And we're actually gonna pick our ender pearl fragment that we just made, and we'll use that one. And then this is pretty simple as well. This just controls whether the tab will have a search bar. All of the vanilla ones don't, except for the search items one, which shows every item in the game and lets you search. So I'm just gonna leave this off and click on Save Mod Element. Okay, so now that we've made this creative tab, I actually think we should put our ender pearl fragment into that creative tab. So I'm just going to double click on it to edit it, come over to properties here, and we'll delete this out of the ingredients tab, and we're going to add our end update creative tab right here. You selected, and we can just save the mod element and we're good to go. Now the next thing I'd like to show you guys how to add is additional functionality onto items. And this is gonna cover how to make items furnace fuel and then also how to make them compostable. In order to do this, we're gonna make a sort of ender infused coal item. So once again, we'll come up here to add and item. I'm gonna call this ender coal, create new item. And this time for the texture, I've actually went ahead and created the texture in a different program. And so in order to upload it, I'm just gonna click on this, click on import texture, and I'm going to find the texture that I have right here under ender coal and just click on open, and you'll notice there it is in our list. And we can select it. This is very useful, like I said, when you want to create a texture based on an existing item. Because right here, I took very obviously the base of coal and just added these little ender flecks in it. All right, so we've imported our custom texture here. I'm just gonna leave everything else like normal, skip over these and come to properties. We'll set the name to ender coal. I'm gonna add this to our custom creative tab that we made. All of this other stuff should be fine. And I'm just gonna skip over everything else and just save it. Basic item, once again, all done. But now, how do we make this work like furnace fuel? And the answer is an item extension. If we come up here to the plus button, and then we can add an item extension, I'm just gonna call this the Ender Coal extension. And when we hit create, this is where we get the options to make it a fuel or a composting material. First though, for this item extension source, we're just gonna click on what item we want this to apply to. So we can make vanilla things as well. Like if we want to make, I don't know, an amethyst block act as furnace fuel, we could do that. But I'm gonna click on my Ender Coal here. Use selected, and now we have the following options. In order to make it a fuel, we're just going to check this box here, and now we want to set the fuel burn time, and this is actually in ticks. And the way that you can figure this number out is by taking the number of items that you want to burn and then multiply it by 200. And this works because each item burns for 10 seconds and there's 20 ticks in a second. And you can see here the default would be 1600 ticks, which works out to 8 items, but I want mine to actually burn 12 items. So I'm going to come into my calculator here, and I'm just going to do 12 items times 200, and we get this number 2400, which is just what I'm going to put into our box here. All of these conditions and everything, again, I'm going to explain these later. This will make more sense once you've watched my procedures video. And now for a composting material, this will be the chance that when you click it on a composter, it will actually add a layer of bone meal. And this is not a percent. This is a value between 0 and 1. If you put 1, that means that it will, every single time you click on it, make a new layer of composting appear. And if you do like 0.5, for example, that will mean that there's a 50% chance. But I'm just going to set this to 0 because obviously you can't compost the coal. And then this final one, using an item as a dispenser output, is basically what happens when you put the item in a dispenser. Instead of firing it out, it'll do something custom, but we don't really have the means to work with that yet. So once again, this will be explained in the future. So let's just come up here and save mod element. And now we have this ender coal as well that can be used in a furnace. And let's actually test this out. And in order to test this out, we're just going to come up to this play button right up here, click on it. And now down here, you can actually see the Minecraft console. This is where you'll be able to see if any errors come up. But if nothing comes up, the game should just open any minute now. All right, and here we go. We've been loaded into Minecraft. Now, MCreator actually has this interesting option called Create Test World, and if you click on this, this will just create a nice, empty, blank, flat world in order to test in. You can, of course, still create worlds the normal way as well. But now, if we open up our inventory, you should see there's a second page over here, and if we come over here, we have our End Update tab. And inside of it, our Ender Pearl fragment and our Ender Coal that we created. So our Ender Pearl fragment doesn't really do anything, but I'd like to test the coal, so I'm just gonna grab some of that, and we'll grab a furnace, and we'll grab, oh, I don't know, some iron. And if we plop down this furnace, and we put in our iron, and we put in one of our coal, there we go, it started to cook. All right, and we can see that after having put in one piece of coal, it smelted exactly 12 items. So that all worked out perfectly. And that's actually gonna be it for today. That is it for part 1, how to make items. In the next one, we're gonna be looking at how to make blocks. So remember to stay subscribed so that you don't miss that video. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a great rest of your day. Today is the first episode of a new series where I'm gonna teach. Shut up. Go away. Stop it. Quit it. Cut it out. Jeez.